welcome to Hot Takes, Hotwire's brand new podcast. I'm Leah Esser. I'm a director in our San Francisco office, and I will be the host for today. If you don't know who we are, Hotwire is a global technology communications consultancy, and Hot Takes is our chance to talk to industry leaders about change and current trends during this time, how to respond to them, and how to connect with your consumers and the market at large. For our first episode, we have Enrique Saboya, who is VP of Growth at Kiva. So welcome and thank you for joining us. To kick us off, could you tell us a little bit about Kiva and what you do there?
Sure. Thank you, Leah. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So as you mentioned, I'm the VP of Growth, which means that I lead marketing and brand and how we go to market and tell our story and our impact. Kiva is a nonprofit, and we were founded in 2006, so we're celebrating our 15 years of operation this year. And our mission is to create a financially inclusive world, right? There are 1.7 billion people who are unbanked or underbanked in the world, which means that they don't have the means or the financial opportunity to go and improve their lives. Whether it is to get an education, whether it is to start a business, or to just build plumbing in their house, they don't have the means to go and get the funds to do that. That's where Kiva in its community comes in. We work with a lot of field partners who works with these people out in the world, and we're in 80 plus countries. And what we do is we bring those stories into the Kiva.org platform. What that means is, let's say someone in Kenya, an entrepreneur in Kenya, wants to buy a cow to grow their business. They need $500 to buy that cow, but they don't have those $500, and they can't go to a bank and ask for those $500 because that bank doesn't know who they are. They can't quite they don't have access to it. So what that means is we will tell that entrepreneur story on Kiva.org, and then people like you and I can go and make microloans of as little as $25 to them. And if enough of us do that, they can raise $500, and then they can buy that cow. Now, what's really cool about it is you as a giver, you can choose exactly whom to support. So the transparency is amazing. You get access to updates and understand the actual impact your money is having out on the field. And on Kiva, because it's a loan, it's not just a donation. 97% of the money put on Kiva.org is repaid, which means that your money goes further because you can use those same $25 and help a second person and a third person and a fourth person. So it's an incredibly smart way to give. Over 15 years, we have millions of people have helped millions of borrowers, and we've raised over $1.4 billion in 80 plus countries. And we're really proud of what we've achieved, but there's still a lot of people to help and a lot of impact we can have, especially in the middle of a crisis like COVID-19.
Right. Wow, that's amazing and an incredible mission. Talking of COVID-19, can you tell us a little bit about how that sort of impacted you as a business and how you responded to the crisis, if you did?
Yeah. Entrepreneurs and small businesses are hurting all over the world, especially those that are financially excluded. Much like in the US, big business got a lot of the support from the government or the immediate support. But people who are excluded or have harder access to that capital are even more hurt right now and really need help. So our stance as a brand is we want to help as many people as we can, as quickly as we can. And to achieve that, we launched a multi-pronged COVID-19 response, right? It includes helping actually US businesses, small businesses who have not been able to get help through other means, who are impacted, helping our actual partners out on the field, our microfinance partners. They're also hurting because their countries are shut down. And we really want to make sure the microfinance environment stays healthy through this crisis so that we can help rebuild and recover afterwards. And also helping as many borrowers as we can out in the world, as we can source them and find them, and as the countries start to reopen, right? As the countries start to open up again. So we invite businesses, we invite individuals to come to Kiva.org and contribute to the Kiva.org response so that we can help as many people as we can who are economically impacted right now because of the crisis.
Yeah, and I'm interested, you've mentioned a lot sort of your global impact and your ability to reach people around the
Hmm.
world. I'm interested in kind of Kiva's unique ability to be global at this time and reach
Yeah.
those people versus sort of the US and the small business approach that we're seeing from the government as well.
Yeah. I mean, a moment of crisis, a bit, in my opinion, a business should really lean on its superpowers, right? What do we already do that's really good that can help in a
Yeah.
crisis? And this has never been more relevant to Kiva than right now, right?
Mm,
Kiva already works on a day-to-day basis in 80 plus countries. We are helping hundreds of thousands of people every year, and we've helped millions over the last 15 years. So it was amazing to see how quickly we could turn on those engines when we saw, wow, this is going to be a truly global crisis. How can we help? Who is best positioned to help entrepreneurs and small businesses that do not have access to a bank account, that do not have access to
mm,
the banking system, to the international market of finance? And Kiva is
mm,
incredibly well positioned in that. So
yeah.
it was really about amplifying what we'd been building for 15 years and be able to reach as many people as quickly as we could.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I think would be great to hear from you from a marketing perspective how that worked, because I think, you know, if you look at some of the brands that have done it really well or responded really well, it's because it was, you know, really authentic to them as a
Mhm.
brand. They already had a, you know, a very authentic culture or product. They were able to pivot quite effectively. So I'd love to hear about the role, your role within the business in making this
Mhm.
happen, and also just the general role that marketing played and communications played in this.
Yeah. So the role that we played, I mean, there's a couple ways to think about it. One is internally, right? As soon as the crisis hit, all of our teams that are out on the field, that are working with corporate partners, they all go into activity to say how can we gather the most energy? How can we be the most helpful and supportive? Who are the different stakeholders out in the world, whether they are at the very last mile entrepreneurs, whether it is the microfinance ecosystem, who needs help in this to survive this crisis, right? And we just started running in 100 different directions, as we should, because there's 100
Mhm.
different ways to help in this crisis. The role that marketing can play is to how do we bring all those ideas together, all those lines of impact together, all those different audiences together, and are able to tell a concise and clear story of the impact that Kiva can have, the role that Kiva can play, and the people who need the help and who can benefit from it. So
Mhm.
it was a lot of cross-functional, deep understanding sessions to understand who in this crisis is being the most impacted, who
Mhm.
needs the most help, right? And so that's sort of the job internally. How do we get a grip of all the different things that we could be doing, and help decide which ones should we be targeting, should we be moving forward on, and then transform that into storytelling for the external audience, right? Whether that is the lender like you and I, whether it is a corporate partner, whether it is a prospective person who's never a lender who's never heard of Kiva before. What's the story that we can tell? How are we going to package all these different lines of activities to explain to someone who is deeply knowledgeable about Kiva already? Here's how Kiva is delivering in the middle of this crisis, or to explain to someone who's never heard of Kiva before, hey, you're now hearing about how economies all over the world are hurting, and maybe you want to do something about it. Maybe you can help. Kiva is a
Yeah.
way for you to do that. So marketing played a pivotal role, and communications played a pivotal role in us understanding internally everything that we should do, and the options that we have, but then transforming that into an external message. So it's
Yeah.
very clear the role that Kiva play, how Kiva is differentiated, and then the action that someone can take and make that as easy as frictionless as possible.
Mhm. Um, and I'm interested, you mentioned sort of external messaging and external audiences, and you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
quite a few audiences there. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, we are at a time we've never experienced before, in that something is affecting every single person in the world. Doesn't matter who you are,
Yeah.
you know, where you live, what age you are, we're all being affected by the same thing. So I think in terms of targeting and target audiences, which is an obviously common term for us as marketers. How do you feel that the business had to adapt to, you know, a different targeting approach, or looking at audiences, and how you get the message out to them essentially?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer in the middle of a crisis. What we do know though is that our audience has been we understand who our audience is. Our audience leans female. Our audience leans older. Many people who are retired, right? People who have disposable income to help to want to help somebody, and that's been who we've gone after for the majority of our 15 years. But as you pointed out, this is a very different world now, and there's many people who are considering and trying to figure out how can I help, right? So Kiva is going through that transformation now, which is how do we amplify or expand who our target audience is, because we know there are millions and millions more people who are considering to do good or to support the people who we serve, right? So I think I'll actually, if you ask me again in about 6 months, I'll have a much clearer answer for you. But what we do know is that we are going much broader with our messaging. We are going much broader with our content. We are using new channels to reach people. We are leveraging celebrity partnerships in a way that we haven't done before. Like you know very well, Leah, but we have a new partnership with Sofia Vergara, which opens up the Kiva brand to a brand new audience, the Hispanic audience in the U.S., the mass market audience in the U.S. in a way that we haven't really been able to do it in the past. And we think our story has never been more relevant. So we're going much broader. We're trying to reach a much broader user base. And I think at the end of this incredible time that we're in, really extraordinary time in this crisis, we're going to have a much different makeup of the Kiva audience.
Great. Okay, I'm just going to focus on the Sofia Vergara stuff quickly, because obviously we've worked together on that. But given there's been a lot of backlash towards celebrity culture during this time and how celebrities have responded or been activated, how do you feel that your partnership with Sofia, the partnership with Sofia, has been more authentic, and why did you sort of use it as a way to get the message out and reach those people?
Yeah.
That was a wild question. Sorry.
No. It's the right question. The way to think of it, in my opinion, what sets a good celebrity partnership in a moment of crisis, and I think it's the way that we're or going after with Sofia, is the authenticity of the story and actual impact and action, right? There's a difference between recording a song in a moment of distress and actually trying to get support and funds and impact in a moment of crisis, right? So what was really fascinating to us is, as we enter this relationship with Sofia, is to understand that she's been a long-term supporter of microfinance, right? This is something she's been passionate about for a long time. She believes in supporting small businesses, but not only just to give money away, but to set them up to be sustainably successful, right? And microfinance is an incredible tool for that, and she's been a long-term supporter of microfinance. So for us, that was actually a surprise. We didn't know that. And that's because Sofia actually, she gives a lot, but she doesn't always scream from the mountaintop of the impact that she's having, which speaks volumes to her commitment to the actual impact. So that gave us a lot of trust that this was the right partner. And then for her and her team to say, hey, we really want to get as many people aware of our partnership and to drive as much impact. The most important metric to them was how many people are being helped out on the field. And that was really inspirational for us, because that is the most important metric for us too. How many people, how many lives are we changing by making them financially included? So for us, it was incredible to see such natural alignment. And that's what we think makes this partnership special, and what's going to make it really successful for us to raise a lot of money and help a lot of people who are in need in this moment of crisis.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And using it for good is just even more exciting. So I'm interested though, you mentioned like in 6 months' time, I'll be able to answer that question more effectively. And I think that's a really interesting point is, we sort of we're sort of going through phases with this, right? Like the phase one was that sort of reaction, and you guys and we worked together really quickly to, look at what was going on and think about how we could react to that, immediately, to help people to get funds to people who need it. We sort of feel like we're entering a different phase now, which is, I guess, things are starting to reopen. I guess you could call it the recovery phase, hopefully. What I'd love to sort of hear from you is, one, like, how are you using this time to gather the data you need to, effectively make this a long-term campaign? And two, what do you see as the sort of next step for brands and marketers within the recovery phase, specifically for Kiva, but also just moving forward in how we engage and connect with consumers?
Yeah, there's a couple of sort of phases I've been thinking about over the last weeks as we try to define what this crisis is, how it's evolving, what it's going to be in the future, which is a terribly difficult thing to do, as we are truly in unprecedented times. But it was interesting to see, as soon as the crisis hit, the first thing that people needed was just healthcare, or help in the healthcare space, right? And then there was the impact of food, and those haven't gone away. But we've started to add on, what are the things that we need as a civilization to survive through this crisis? And I believe the next thing, which has already started, is economic relief, right? How do we make sure that we get economic relief to small businesses and entrepreneurs so that they can survive this transformation? Because I think most people agree, there's no way at the end of this we go back to what it was before, right? We believe there will be dramatic change in how people live, how people consume, the products that people consume, and that will be long term. It's hard to know what that will look like in the future, but I think people can expect that things will look different. And small businesses especially will need capital to survive and figure out that transformation. So I think that's one of the phases that we keep thinking about. And in the economic recovery, the economic assistance is where Kiva can play a really special role. So that's why we're actually ramping up our efforts right now. Mm-hmm. Additionally, to your point, there was sort of the relief phase, which is just, we don't know what's happening. We just need enough money to pay for rent, or to stay open, or not to have to shut down, right? Mm-hmm. That's the sort of relief phase. And I think we're still deep into it, right, as economies that are mostly closed. But to your point, as economies are starting to reopen, and demand for their services are going to start to go up, then I think there will be some recovery, right, where we are helping folks with capital to reinvest, to rehire people. And then finally, there will be rebuild, right? How do we actually rebuild economies in this new environment, whatever that may be, right? And small businesses and entrepreneurs will need find access to cash, to money, in order to make the investments necessary to survive in this relief phase, to recover as businesses are reopening, and then to finally rebuild in whatever new reality we live in post the COVID crisis. Whether it is 6 months from now, 12, 18, it's unclear. But we believe there will be multiple phases and needs to help those small businesses evolve through the phases. So I think the job of the marketing team at Kiva specifically in this crisis, and Petition and other places, is to tell that story, right? Is we're inviting people to help and support entrepreneurs and small businesses during this crisis. How can we tell that story back to them and say, hey, economies are reopening, businesses are being successful. Now they need help to do the next thing in their recovery and rebuild through this crisis. So we're working really hard right now to figure out, how do we gather stories from the field, which is a core competency of Kiva, but without going out to the field, right? How do we transform our way of gathering and telling stories, of connecting lenders and borrowers in a world in which we can't send people out into the field to gather those stories, to capture the impact of the giving that takes place on Kiva.org. So we're ourselves going through a transformation to discover how to tell those stories. But I think that's our job, right? It's sort of, everyone wants to help someone, or most people do, and the people who do, they want to hear their impact. So I think our job as a marketing communications team is to connect those two dots and get people taken through the journey of the recovery and the rebuild of the crisis.
It's interesting because, you know, you mentioned like you can't get to field partners, and but at the same time, you're bringing people probably closer together, you know, through the work that you're doing. And I think the world feels probably much more smaller than it ever did. You know, people connect with everyone on a different level now. There's a sort of, you know,
Yeah.
mutual emotional connection that people have with everyone around the world. So I guess it's a really exciting time for you guys and being able to facilitate that, but also, you know, being able to prepare for the future is also super hard. So I think, how do you, as a VP of growth, how do you plan for the future right now? Do you, or are you just in a phase of monitoring and responding?
You know, I love, there's a quote, you've heard me say this multiple times, but I'll say it again. One of my favorite quotes is a Mike Tyson quote, which is, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face,
Yeah.
right? We had what I thought was an amazing plan for 2020, and then COVID-19 just punched us all in the face, right? So we're truly in unprecedented times where we're trying to plan maximum 4 to 6 weeks ahead, but every week we check in and readjust. And the more confidence we get into how what we're bringing to market is being successful, how the market is reacting to us, ongoing demand or going supply of loans on the site, we can make better decisions. But at this point, we believe it makes sense to be as agile as you can, to accept the fact that this is a COVID-19 world and we just live in it. And I don't mean that from a defeatist point of view, but from we just should accept that this is trying to predict future behavior based on past performance is probably a fool's errand at this point. There's too much we don't know. There's too much that's unpredictable. So we are trying to use our superpowers, which we have. We have seen other crises, although nothing of this magnitude, but really to stay nimble and to react as quickly as we can to what's happening out on the field, what's happening in our homes and home states. This is truly a shared experience in a scale that the world hasn't seen in a long time. So we shouldn't pretend to know what comes next, but we should put in place the processes and the teams and the agility necessary to be able to react and be well positioned to survive, and for Kiva specifically to have as much impact as we can, and to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you've given loads of great advice and just hearing from you in terms of, you know, how you responded is great to hear. And I think to wrap us up, it would be great to hear your kind of top tips and advice for other marketers or people, you know, in similar roles that might be listening to this, as to how, you know, they can move forward and think about what they can apply to their business.
So in a moment of crisis, I mentioned this a little earlier, but my main advice is lean into your superpowers, right? There's another quote, I don't remember who it's from though, but I heard it recently and it really stuck with me, which is, the moment of crisis is the wrong time to exchange business cards. Mm-hmm. So it's really about, what do you already do really well, right? Yeah. What is the value you provide to society, to your stakeholders, to your users, and how can you turn that to help folks in a moment of crisis, right? This is not the time to build some new capabilities, right? Maybe you can add on to a core capability that you already have, but to try to transform right now in a moment of crisis it's pretty challenging, and you may not come across as the most trustworthy, or I'm struggling for the right word here, but thank you. That's the word I was looking for. The most authentic thing to do, right? Yeah. It's really about how can you leverage your core competencies in a moment of crisis. That will help you tell an authentic story. That will help you have the most benefit. That will help you more deeply connect with your current user base and then expand that user base. That's my number one advice: is find your superpower and lean into it.
Love that. I'm going to take that with me everywhere I go. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been so good to talk to you. And yeah, that's a wrap.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to my home. Hope everyone enjoyed.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about Kiva or go and make a loan, you can head to kiva.org. If you want any more information on the podcast schedule, you can head to our website, which is hotwireglobal.com. You can sign up and receive updates for the next new episodes. So thank you.